What's up, filmmakers? This is Thomas from Keeping It Real in the Film World, where you will hear stories, experiences, and from filmmakers on their thoughts on making connections. Alright guys, quiet on the set, roll cameras. Enter Daniel Konik, a multimedia journalist out of Ohio. We talk about how important it is to stay motivated, stay focused, and most importantly, on adapting to situations or circumstances. There is no question for the last 2 months we all have had to adapt in some way, shape, or form. For some more than others during the COVID-19 pandemic. Here he is now, the one, the only, Daniel Konik. All right, thank you, Dan, for coming on at just short notice.
Thanks for asking me. Appreciate it.
And it's amazing, actually. I was able to do this in just about 2 hours time.
Not bad.
I'd just like to start off. I came across just 2 days ago this video. I started watching it, and all my time at home I've been spending on YouTube and TED Talks, and I came across this one TED Talk. It was about finding your purpose in 5 minutes, and I thought this would be like a great way to start off as an intro to guests who I talk with when I do this. And there's 5 simple questions. It's finding your purpose in 5 minutes, and he pretty much had asked everyone these questions. The first one is real simple. I know this already, but who are you? And it's just your name.
Dan Konik.
What do you do?
My official title is multiple media producer. I'm a photographer, video editor, field producer, writer. I kind of do whatever they throw at me, but the official title is multiple media producer.
Multimedia producer. I'm pretty much in the same boat myself, but I'll get into that here in a little bit. Let me just finish these. Going to question number 3. So we hit, what do you do? Multimedia producer. Who do you do it for?
2 companies. I work for PBS Idea Stream out of WVIZ in Cleveland, although I work in the Columbus Bureau of the State House. So, I'm working in Columbus, working for Cleveland. And we produce news media for State of Ohio PBS and NPR stations. So I produce video, audio, and web content, as well as still photographs for the web. Kind of anything they throw at me, they ask me to go shoot, I take care of it. I also run a company called Konik Media, which is pretty much everything else. Clients call me and they want something photographed or videoed or recorded, I take care of it.
All right, and the 4th question, what do the people want or need from you?
The highest quality content I can produce given the circumstances, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is the new normal, which is this. I had never done anything like this before all this started. I literally had never once used my webcam, ever. And I had to learn how to do that. And it's been a learning curve, but to answer your question succinctly, the best quality audio and video I can produce and photos with the gear I have.
The given time, I like it. And the last one of these intro questions.
Sure.
How can people change after you do the best quality audio given the times for them?
How do you mean? I don't really understand the question.
What can this do for people?
Well, I think that, and I'm very lucky, I work with people who are very, very patient. If I say I can't get something, or so this has to be this way, they're like, sure, they trust me. So they do and I trust them also. If our reporters record Zoom videos on their computers at home because they're working from home, I take that video, it is what it is. Some are better than others. So I guess we all are doing the best we can with what we've got.
I like it. And before these questions, I like to start off with this one question, actually a couple other few questions as well.
Sure.
And it's, what are you excited about today?
Today, I'm excited to, in a personal or professional note. On a personal note, I'm excited to possibly see my granddaughter this weekend. They live 9 miles down the road, and we can't see them because of all this nonsense. So we're trying to get a social distancing together. Professionally, I'm excited about just putting material together. We cut our show on Thursday and feed it on Friday. And so it's always, I've been doing it for them for 4 years, and it's always exciting to me to see everything come together. It's a different show every week, especially now because of all this coronavirus. I have no access to our studio. So I have other folks directing it for me, which for a control freak is difficult. But fortunately, I have folks that I really trust to do a great job. And I sat down with the director who's doing it in the interim and, explained to her just some of my concepts. But I trust her. She's a pro. But that's been a weird thing to let go of, is not directing the show. Not directing. I literally set the cameras. We do live to tape or live to timeline, and letting that go has been a change for me because I've been doing that for 4 years. But just just doing the best quality I can do with what I have. You have to be adaptable. You have to go with the flow sometimes.
And you said it right there. I saw it again with all this. That's pretty much the normal, the main thing anyone's talking about these days. And me being in the digital web, actually sports, I'm lucky myself. They're giving us classic games and old highlights that we can clip.
Oh, I miss sports. I really do.
Yeah, I can't wait to get, if I know there's working something, I can't wait for some kind of live games coming back, even if they do no fans.
Give me the sound of a baseball game in the background. That's all I'm asking,
Oh yeah, me, baseball and hockey.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's going to get ugly in August if we don't have football, I'll tell you right now.
And I saw something that it was an article or it was videos, and they're setting up. It was like, you heard of a TriCaster, which they call it a studio in a box.
Okay.
Well, I saw that on another level. It was a studio. It was pretty much an at-home studio. I saw, and you had your executive producer, and you had all your IFBs set up, all you to contact with talent, and had all these switchers, and I had all that set up, and it was doable, and it was actual studio set up remotely from each person's home.
When I worked for the CBS station here in Columbus, I worked there for many years, and I moved to PBS a few years ago. When they first got the Giros, the suitcase apps, I'm telling you, cell technology has changed everything. It was just astonishing to me that I could do a live shot with a thing the size of a briefcase. Now, of course, they're smaller. That was several years ago, but it changed everything. Because I ran live trucks for a while, and it was a pain. I hated it because if you're shooting, you're editing, you're running a live truck. It was a giant hassle. With the DeGiro or Live View or any of that brand of thing. It's just amazing what they could do. Cell technology changed everything.
Oh yeah, and that question just made me think of that. And so when was your passion for multimedia? I'm realized when did you know that, hey, I wanted to work in this, be a multimedia producer?
I started at Lorain County Community College in 1987. I graduated high school in 86, just fall of 86. And I originally thought about a few different things I knew I wanted to work in journalism. I knew I wanted to be a reporter. So I spent a year as a newspaper reporter, realized it wasn't quite for me. So a good friend of mine was in the AV classes, the telecommunications classes there at Lorain County Community College. And so I took a class with him, and I just fell in love with it. I thought it was so much fun, such a cool thing to do for a living. My big concern was being able to make a living from it, because I knew that even back then, there were very few jobs, And I had a prof tell us all the first day class, none of you will ever work in the media, which of course is nonsense. I'm sure he was trying to weed out the people who weren't serious about it. But I remember thinking, even back then, that can't be true. And I had one of our profs was a video editor at WEWS in Cleveland at Channel 5. And I asked him very frankly, are there jobs? He goes, yes, but you have to work for it. And I realized that it wasn't going to be easy, but it's what I wanted to do for a living. It's something you can do, you can enjoy. It's fun. Shooting news is not always fun, but it's a cool way to make a living. Not going to make a ton of money unless you're, get up into management. But at that time, I realized I knew I wanted to do some kind of journalism, some kind of news gathering. But at that point, I knew that's what I wanted to do for a living. It seemed like it's such a neat way to make a living.
Yeah, it's like a more of a purpose calling, like teachers. They don't.
Yeah, it is.
They don't make a lot of money either, but it's a very necessary job.
Well, it's like I told my son the other day. you spend most of your life at work, or at least it seems like it. There's no point in dragging yourself to work. It's just the worst. And we've all been there. We've all had jobs we didn't like. Dragging yourself to work is just the worst. It sucks so much joy out of your life. They have to feel like you have to go to work. The job I have now, and I'm not just saying this because my boss will watch this. I love my job. I love going into work, and it's been very strange in this new normal. Only going in 2 days a week into the newsroom. I'm working from home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's been very strange, and I miss that interaction. Because as I said, there's only 4 of us. And so we'll sit there in an open office, and we talk all day because they're all really, a lot of fun to talk to. And so we've been texting back and forth. It's just not the same. And I think we're all adjusting with that not being the same. It's not something I want to get used to. I'm ready to get back in there full time and, be always at the newsroom.
Yeah, I miss going in there and playing with all the toys in the studio and the control
room. Sure, absolutely. That's the fun. And I'm glad you said that because that, for me, is the fun part of the job. I started off with a 3 3/4 tape, shooting M2 tape, which was a disaster. That's a whole nother podcast. When I worked in West Palm Beach in the early 90s, and then going to beta, and then going nonlinear with P2 cards and SD cards. You have to keep up with that stuff. And I've worked with people who resist that. I'm like, well, you can complain all day, but at the end of the day, you still have to use this gear. You still have to edit, using Edius or whatever it is. You have to learn that you have to use this. So you can complain all you want. At the end of the day, you have to use this, or you work at a grocery store. You can complain all you want, but this is the reality. And for me, that's the fun. I don't do boredom. I don't handle boredom well at all. So for me, learning new things and things changing up is part of the fun.
Yeah, and part of this, what better way to actually, if you haven't done it yet, start a podcast and just find people that you can talk to during these times, and
sure,
and you erase
and
your
doing what you did. You look for resources, you reach out, and you ask. The worst somebody can say is no. Well, they can say worse things than that, but the final thing they can say is no, and then you just move on. I was happy to help today because I think it's fun to spread the word and include some positivity about what we do, because there's certainly enough negativity out there that I try to ignore, about what it is, about media gathering, about news gathering, especially news gathering. Because everybody's an expert. There's a lot of armchair quarterbacking in what we do.
And one thing I like in our little chat before we started this up, but as you bring up, and I'm sure we'll get more into this too, everyone's an expert, but
yeah,
you got to be not afraid to say the words, three words. I don't know.
Sure, of course. And that's the thing about, again, the people I work with is if I can't do something, either give me time to learn it or accept that I can't do it. And they're very good about that. And that's largely been my experience. And the other thing I've experienced a lot is a lot of backup. I work with some other people who are much better at, I use Premiere Pro I work together with. And I've used it for 4 years and I'm still learning. I'm about 60% down. But there are things I'm just not going to use cutting news, And I have people who are excellent, but I have no problem. How do I do this? And they walk right over and they help me. And that kind of support is critical. Now, in my home studio, of course, I'm on my own. So thank God for YouTube videos and Google, because it's got me out of some scrapes. But it's a matter of just being open with people. And if you don't know, don't try to BS people. People hate that. And that goes 10 times for me. I'm not going to try to sell you something that I can't do and then turn around and I can't do it, and then you're screwed. You know what I mean? Like, and they're not doing you any good. If I say, yes, I can do that, just bullshit, BSing around. And how does that help you? That doesn't help you in the least. I'm there to help people, produce their product. It looks bad on me if I can't do it. And I said I could. That's ridiculous.
If you know it, great. If you don't, then say it and we'll learn it together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's obviously it's more helpful that, the more skills you have, the more useful you are. And no one is, what's the word? When you can't get rid of somebody, I lost the word. Indispensable. No one's indispensable, but the more you learn, the more you make yourself useful. You build those points up where if you have a bad day and you screw something, they're like, well, we'll try again tomorrow, instead of, lowering the hammer on you.
A couple months ago, last September of last year, I was actually in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
For an event. I don't know if you ever heard of one. He's more of a, he refers to himself as a relationship lifestyle entrepreneur, Lewis Howes.
No, not familiar.
Heard of him? He's from Ohio. He lived in New York and a couple of states. Currently is out in LA, California.
Okay.
he's from Ohio, and every year he started doing this for about 4 years. This Summer to Greatness. I've been going to that, and this is leading into one of the questions I also like to ask
Sure,
before I really start. We haven't really officially really got started yet in this, but I'm about there.
no problem.
And he he's big on like it's inspirational. I guess you can say he's one of those influencers, and I've
Sure.
been following him for the last 2 or 3 years. So anyway, I've been to there, and after listening to his podcast, which is up there in one of the top podcasts in the world now, most downloaded podcasts, I like to ask this as well as the other one. What are you excited for?
Sure.
What are you grateful for?
What am
And
I grateful for?
you might have already said it, but yeah,
I'm grateful for the support more than anything. I mean, I've always been surrounded by great people. I've been very, very lucky with managers. I worked for three commercial stations. I worked for WCJB in Gainesville, I worked for WPTV in West Palm Beach, WBNS TV in Columbus. And I didn't always agree with my managers. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But I always had respect from them, and that's very, very important to me. So I'm very grateful for the respect I've gotten from people who can literally just say, "Go shoot this, shut up and go do it." Instead, they listen to my concerns, especially about safety. Safety is a big thing with personal safety, and we'll get into that a little later with the coronavirus thing. I think you're going to ask me about that. But when you're shooting, crime scenes at 3 o'clock in the morning, if I say I'm not safe getting out of the truck, they say, "Okay, go home." And that's always been my experience. You have to be safe because it's only a TV show. I'm a very dedicated, hardworking employee, but I'm not stupid. I'm not going to get hurt, shooting a crime scene at 3 in the morning, or it's any place unsafe like that. It's just not going to happen. And I've always been very, very lucky to have support from managers who say, "Well, we come to the next day. What happened last night?" "Well, it wasn't safe." "Fine, understood." You know what I mean? So it's very important to have that moral support, and that support. Somebody has your back. You have a good manager who trusts you. So I'm very grateful for that.
yeah, and that's great. You and there's a new aspect to the safety thing in the last few months too.
Sure, of course.
And before we get into the deep stuff, what do you think is harder? And you might have mentioned the people trying to weed out, like, and what they're going to college, they're getting started. What do you think is harder, getting started or keeping it going?
I don't think getting started is harder. I think if it's anything, getting started, getting a reel together. There's so much gear available now. You can go to B&H and get a used camera. I bought my used camera for $1,800. You don't have to go into a mortgage like back in the day. They were $40,000. Now you get a decent camera for $1,500. So getting a reel together, getting material to show people is not that hard. Getting your foot in the door without a college degree is very difficult. You have to have at least a bachelor's degree, or they're not going to take you seriously. And that's just been my experience. Others may have different experiences, but you have to have that degree for them to take you seriously. Staying in is a matter of, it's very, and I'm talking about shooting local news now, shooting on the street, is very emotionally draining sometimes. You're in some tough situations mentally and physically. Shooting a court, shooting some awful things on the street. I've seen dead bodies in person. I've seen people die. It's been awful. But that's a small percentage of what occurs. I'd say maybe 20%. The rest of it is just keeping your energy up and not doing the same old thing. I said earlier, I don't do boredom well, which is absolutely true. So as an offshoot of that, I always try to find new ways of doing things and learning from other people. I've worked with some great photographers, reporters, producers who have some wonderful ideas about how to do things. Then, of course, it's up to me to pull that off, which I'm happy to do. But I think just keeping that energy going is difficult when you have a long-term career. I've been shooting since 1992, and there are good days and bad days, and you just have to swallow it and be a professional. That's very important to me. I don't know if this is off track or not, but one of my ultimate pet peeves is people being unprofessional. I really, really, really hate that. If everyone has a bad day, and everyone's allowed to have those bad days, but at the end of the day, you're not doing anybody any favors by acting unprofessionally. You have to be an adult and do your job, be at your job. And that goes for anything. I don't care if you're a plumber or a videographer or a zookeeper. You have to be a professional. Do your job. Know that people can rely on you.
Yeah, exactly. I myself, and you mentioned going into your background a little bit. I just wanted to explain my background a little bit too,
Sure.
for anyone who may not know, who's just now tuning my show and whatnot. That I got started with this media back in 2010, right out of college, essentially as an intern. Then got hired right that same year with the Fox RSNs, which I started working with all the RSN regions, including
Okay.
Ohio,
Right.
west out in California, to Florida, to Texas, to Arizona, all covered pretty much all the regions in the country that is considered RSN. And I'm with one of the regions. I've been doing pretty much the same thing for 10 years. And
Okay.
before that, I was working my way through college,
Yeah.
just at Kroger, just a regular, ordinary
I DJ'd weddings for 7 years
part-time
to pay for
job.
college. I worked at a video store, worked at a book warehouse. We all do it, landscaping, you do what you got to do.
So you say going back to 92, or maybe even it goes past that, but where does your background begin as multimedia, or
Well,
where?
I guess, back in the early 90s, it was just video or nothing. There were still photographers who were still shooting film back in those days. But I started off with video, and I shot video. My first professional job was in '89 when I was still at Ohio University. We shot some video of the graduation for Malaysian television. My friend set that up. So that was really exciting to make that contact. Never shot work with them again. But it was that was my first real taste of freelance video, producing and shooting. Super great people. And then a few things, here and there, it just sort of picked up. I didn't start my freelance company until 2004. And literally, my daughter's orthodontist asked me to shoot a promotional video for his business. And it's so funny that I've been thinking about starting up a freelance job anyway. It just gave me the impetus to go buy gear and buy a computer and get cracking. But it's been so much fun. Good jobs and bad. You know how it is. Sometimes things don't go so well. They usually do. And I've worked with some great people. I've had very, very few unpleasant experiences. You're always going to run into a knucklehead here and there. Always. I don't care what you do. But by and large, it's been very, very productive. I've really enjoyed that part. And it's exciting. Generate your own business, talk to clients, get new clients. It keeps you busy, and it keeps you that active, creative kind of mind going,
Yeah, anything to stay in that flow, keeping it full, or to get in that flow for one. And
oh yeah.
And how do you know when you're in the flow?
Creatively?
It's probably different for every person.
You mean creatively? How do you know when you're in the flow?
Creatively, yes.
I think it's interesting because some clients come to you with an A to Z cookie cutter. I want this, 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 and this. Some people, like I just worked with some folks who said, we trust you, do the best you can do, and this is the event. And it's a different experience both times because it's a little scary being on your own saying, okay, great, this is what I'm shooting. And I appreciate people who tell me A to Z, shoot these precise things, because that way they can't come back and say, why did you miss something? So either one is exhilarating. I appreciate people's trust when they say, just go do this and get it done. And 9 times out of 10, they're happy with it. And 10 times out of 10, you can fix something you're not happy with. But that creativity, you feel like your mind is really working when you're in that creative flow. You're shooting, you're editing, you're writing. It's just, I love it. It's so much fun. Just getting that workflow going is really, you feel like your juices are really flowing.
How can you or others, and now we're starting to get to, we're calling this, and this is your Dan's idea, Daniel. I didn't ask how you like to be called.
Dan's fine.
Dan. It was actually his idea to call this. I'm all for giving out and sharing the credit and all. I'm all for that. He suggested that we should call this media gathering in the new normal, which we're currently in.
Yeah, and it's not going away anytime soon.
And how can you or others, since, because we can expect this for a pretty long while,
I would say 2 years at the minimum. It's interesting because I've watched this evolve very quickly. The way people have adapted to this new way of social distancing and being safe and being careful. It's at first I had my reporters hold their phone up to their computers and record off the screen. It looked like crap and it sounded like crap, but it got the job done. And then because we had a second to take a breath and learn things, it happened like it seemed like it happened like that, like overnight. All this thing just changed. And you say, okay, that's fine, but how can we improve on that? And it's been so interesting to see how people have done it. I mean, I watch the local news every night, picking up tips on how to do things. If it's, some people will take their phone and they'll put it on a tripod and shoot that phone image, and that's fine. That looks great. It looks neat. What you're doing, recording a Zoom video for posterity. Learning how to pin a video so that it's not flashing back and forth between the reporter and the subject. It's been really interesting. I mean, personally, I took an old tripod, one of those $30 tripods everyone buys at Target, and I used a clamp to clamp my stick mic onto it and held it about here on the person. So that way, and it's about maybe 2 feet away. So they're nowhere near it. I'm not touching them. They're not touching me. I'm not transmitting those germs. And then after it's over, I wipe down the mic sponge and the mic itself to kill the germs. Just being careful and being smart. Like, we shot a story at a farm the other day. I shot the interview like that. That's the photo I sent you. And then we did some B-roll across the farm. And of course, when we started walking with the guy, I put my mask on, my surgical mask to block the germs. You can't be too careful. As soon as I got in the car, hand sanitizer. And my wife gets on me about this because I forget when I'm pumping gas, that sort of thing. The hand sanitizer every single time because you can't be too careful. You don't know. And we're washing our hands 20 times a day because you have to. You just have to be smart about it. And you can't let up. I mean, I'm guaranteeing you we've got 2 more years of this at a minimum before we have a vaccine. And you have to let some things go aesthetically. I've never liked, in other words from my old boss, I never liked the mic sitting right here in the shot. You know what I mean? I always like to see the mic out of frame. I think it looks nicer. I had a guy ask me on the thread on Facebook, why are we going to all this crazy rigs and mounts? Why not just pin a lav mic on somebody? Well, because you're touching them. And if you wipe, and I don't know if you have the same concern about this. I'm concerned about all these hand sanitizers and soaps ruining the mics. I'm very concerned about that because it's anything liquid is not good for a mic. So I'm not in the habit of using Lysol wipes or Clorox wipes on my gear. I'm afraid of ruining the finish. I'm afraid of ruining the piece of gear. This stuff's expensive, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to ruin anything. So you have to be careful. So for that reason, I don't use a lav mic because I don't want to touch someone to pin it on them. And I don't want to ruin anything. I try to be as careful as I can be.
Yeah, instead of a lav mic, I see more of a boom.
Yeah.
Boom mic.
Yeah.
And set that up, and now you have the reach that instead of just a regular mic stand too.
And that's one of those things that sometimes works better than others. Like, we interviewed a guy the other day. He was very soft spoken, and I had the mic next to his mouth, and I could hardly hear him. And it was a stick mic, a directional mic, but it's just sometimes it works better than others. It is what it is. You just jack up the audio, you get a little bit of hiss, you get a little bit of hiss in the audio. That's life in the big city. But it's just you have to adapt, and it's one of those things where I'm not going to stop the interview in the middle of the reporter flowing at the interview and try to fix things. You have to deal with it. That's just my news gathering training. You just run and gun. You got to get things done.
So I think we're in the same group together because that's how I found you. But
Right.
I saw one post. I don't know if you saw this or not, but a post of, and I reached out to the guy as well. I haven't heard from him back yet. But anyway, like, he was gathering an interview from across the street over the phone.
Sure.
And he had his camera set up, and it was all across the street. Like,
he was shooting across the street. He had video of the guy from across the street, but he was using the audio from the phone on his.
Yeah.
But that could work.
Requires a lot of editing, but he made it.
It does. It seems a bit much. It seems a bit extreme, but I don't know the situation. I'm sure if you felt it was called for, I'm sure it was. I don't know.
But someone.
Go ahead.
So someone suggested more along the lines of what you were talking about a minute ago. Would maybe not the lav, or maybe a boom, or set up the mic on the stand, and then since he had to, he was almost acting like he didn't have to cross the street at all, but he surely was going. He was on the side already. He might as well set the equipment up there.
And it could be that he was going for a look too. I mean, I've done that where you shoot a reporter across the street as they're, just for aesthetically for look for the story. That could be. I have a friend who's a PIO, and she asked me, "Aren't you worried about the germs flying from someone's mouth onto a mic that's this far away?" I'm like, I suppose. I wiped it down. You know, it's you can only do so much. You have to get the audio. But she's right. I mean, you have to think about these things. You just wipe everything down. That's all you can do.
I guess in such a way, like maybe a reusable or a discardable wind guard, or
See, the
there.
only disposable wind guards I've seen are socks, which is just the clean sock, obviously. But I've seen people. I've done that myself in a pinch. But I don't think that's necessary. First of all, these germs don't live forever. If you have to quarantine that sponge
Mhm.
for 2 weeks, do it. But I wouldn't throw them away. Not me personally. I just lightly dust it with a Lysol wipe, and I'm sure that's fine. Hopefully, I won't get sick in a couple of weeks, but we'll see. I think the thing is, you have to be careful. You have to be smart. You have to listen to what people tell you as far as safety is concerned. But there's only so much you can do. You still have to gather your media.
It'd be smart, be it's more than any time better than ever. Think outside the box. Get
Yeah.
creative, not just how you put the production together, just the equipment used now. How you that's a
GoPro
lot
cameras,
more
cell phone cameras.
involved.
I've set this camera on a beanbag mount on the end of a picnic table and shot this way. And there's your two shot. And it looked great. It sounded great. You give the old sync clap to get things going between the two cameras. It was great. It's phenomenal. A little bit of extra. Just, use your creative juices. Everyone who does this can be creative about it. Don't be afraid to have a little bit of fun with it. I mean, I know guys who are geniuses with GoPros. There's so much fun, creative, amazing things you can do with a GoPro with a small portable camera. With this goofy camera on this thing, on your iPhone or your Droid, you gotta have fun with it and hopefully work with people who appreciate that and are able to use it.
I'm getting into some other thing. Another one thing that you mentioned. Oh, what I like to do. I'll get into just a minute, but uh, in a minute,
Sure.
I want to get to like some actual clear tactics that you can see, but first, how in this new, obviously there's distance learning, but how do you see in these web conferencing and how do you see being colleges shut down, schools are shut down,
Yeah.
there's still learning going on. How do you see people going out to learn these fundamentals when they're all at home, they're behind their screen just
Well, first of
watching?
all, this isn't going to last forever. I mean, things are going to go back to whatever normal was before in a couple of years. So this, I try to think along down the road. 5 years from now, God willing, things will be back to the way they were. But we have interns. We have what we call fellows, who are college students who are learning at our job. They teach me more than I teach them half the time. We had one particularly good intern who really taught me a lot about how to gather video from the web, which I'd never really done before. So you have to, as always, just keep your ear to the ground and listen and pay attention and learn. There's nothing like doing, though. There's nothing like getting out in the field and learning how to shoot, especially that pressure we get, especially in news gathering. You have one chance. This is not, like you're setting up for a music video. With event videography and with news gathering, you have one shot to get it. And unless you know your gear really well, your camera, to get the image you want, like that, you're gonna get screwed. And we all learned the hard way. I blew a couple of big interviews very, very early in my career because I didn't understand the camera function. And there are different ways of doing this. I'm not a techie. I'm not the kind of person who knows the technical ins and outs of the camera, but I know how to work the camera. Does that make sense? Just from doing and asking questions.
Yeah,
I'm not,
there's the basic functions that
yeah,
everything pretty
I'm
much.
not an f-stop, white balance level
Yeah.
kind of guy. I know how to white balance a camera, but I just never learned that way. I learned from sitting down with my first chief, a guy named Joel at TV20, great guy, and saying, "Show me this camera," because I had worked in some video, but not much. And when you're working in market 165, that's the learning market. You learn how to do things. I said, "Just run this over with me real quick. Teach me how to do it," and he did. And it took me a good 6 months of working with that old 3/4 camera to get to where I was comfortable to try creative things. He had to get over that technical hump of learning how to produce in the field, video, audio, 16-pin cables, all that nonsense, which you're too young to have worked with, and you can praise God for that. They were awful. But it took me a good 6 months to get past that technical hump, learn to be creative. And I got to learn to be creative by watching bigger stations. In Central Florida, I'm watching Channel 9 out of Orlando. I'm watching Miami stations. These guys who've been in the business forever, who are very, very creative and having fun with it and learning how to do things differently. That's how I've always said, watch and learn. Sometimes jokingly, but I'm like, the only way you're going to get better is by watching new techniques. And it's just, that's the fun, exciting thing, is learning new things. I love learning new things. Now, I learn stuff. I try to learn things every day. But I think to answer you, hopefully I answered your question. I think I did. But you're talking about people sitting at home trying to learn. You can learn some things by YouTube videos, but you have to get out there and shoot. You have to get out there and shoot photography, videography, whatever it is you're doing, writing, producing. You're only going to learn so much watching videos, and you're only going to learn so much with online chats. You have to get out there and do it. And these days, obviously, it presents some very unique challenges because of the germs that are out there.
Wrap this up. Is there anything that I haven't covered yet that we expected, or?
I don't think so. I think just for me, it's a question of attitude. I mean, we've all worked with people who are very talented and very hardworking, but they have lousy attitudes, and nobody wants to work with them. That's why they're sitting at home instead of working. It's very, very important to have a good attitude, and we all have bad, grumpy days. God knows I do, and we all lack patience. I'm the worst at that. But I think trying to work with people is in our business. You have to work with people. You're not going to be able to go it alone. It just doesn't work that way. And there's no reason, we're all at work so much, there's no reason to make it more difficult than it has to be. That's always been very, very important to me, is don't be afraid to take a stand if you believe in something, but also be smart enough to realize, you're probably right. Maybe we should do it this way. And working with people, understanding, being empathetic, working with people is extremely important, because TV and media in general is all teamwork. I'm nowhere without reporters and producers and technicians who help me get stuff on the air. I can shoot and edit all day, but without folks I work with who help me, I'm nowhere. That stuff's going to sit on a computer. So you have to don't be a pushover, but don't be a jerk. Does that make sense? Meet somewhere in the middle, because people are going to respect you either way. If if you let people push you around, they're not going to respect you. If you're a blockhead, they're not going to respect you. So just be cool, I guess, is basically what it boils down to.
Okay, and it came back to me as you're, I would say we're talking about how you're not the techie guy who learns the specific things of a piece of equipment. I myself, in all 10 years, I've been learning a video. I'd like to call myself a pro at it, and there's still everything I'm still learning, even though I'm a pro and expert at
and
video
there's nothing
editing.
wrong with that.
And the fact that there's these people out there that consider techies and they know the equipment in video editing and like everything else, there is at least 5, probably more ways to do one thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So it doesn't pay to know. You may know how to set the white balance up, but someone else may have another technique that they're just as good or better.
And I know technical shooters who are very dry shooters. Their stuff is not exciting. It's not interesting. And the other knuckleheads like me, I'm all about the creative angles and having fun with it. And I sometimes kind of burn myself because I don't understand the technical aspects of things. I've only been doing still photography for a few years. I'm still learning the technical aspects of shooting a still camera professionally. And I've got burned a few times because I didn't understand the setting for particular thing. Video cameras I kind of have down cold. That I've been doing forever. But it's that balance between creativity and technical understanding. And you have to have it. And I've had my worst problems with video editing, with software. I'm sure you've experienced this also. That's been my number one frustration, is with video editing software, just not working properly, taking too long. Because when you're shooting run and gun news, you're shooting on the fly. What's that?
Rendering.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Takes forever. I call it. I do a rendering walk. I go down to the kitchen, have a cup of coffee when I'm rendering, because I'll drive myself crazy sitting there watching it click and sit at 100% for 10 minutes. You just go walk the dog. You're gonna drive yourself crazy.
When you're trying to ingest something from Dropbox and it says 3 days, no, something's wrong here.
I shot a video for Australian TV one time, and it took all night. And it wasn't that long. It was just a bow shot. It was maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes of video. Because of my home connection, I missed slot in Australia, and I felt terrible. I told them not to pay me. It was awful. But I shot this thing, and I missed slot because it took so long to feed. Now, thank goodness, we have Google Drive and Dropbox, which is almost instantaneous. But I'm trying to feed to an FTP site in Australia with my home connection, which wasn't great. But this is, again, going back to learning. I called the producer. She called me, and she told me what happened. And I apologized profusely. I said, well, I hope we get to work together again. I've learned what the problem was and won't happen again. And as it was, we worked together again a few months later. But just learning, and being patient, which anybody knows me knows is not my strong suit, to say the least. But you have to be patient and learn these things, especially now with everything kind of going to hell.
All right, and that's perfect lead into. I don't know how many tactics you may have, but I want to like come away with 3, maybe 5 tactics that people can
specifically with the coronavirus thing.
Not particularly related to coronavirus, just related to a time when you have to adapt in a pandemic or in another instance where you have to adapt as well. Maybe more 3 tactics of adapting, more or less.
I think it's just being aware. A big one is being aware of your situation, because especially shooting local news, if you roll up on something that's not dangerous, you got to be smart. Keep your eyes open. It's just a TV show, okay? Don't get run over. Don't get shot. Don't get beat up. It's not worth it. And I used to tell my boss this when I worked in local news. I mean, you will not get a harder worker than me on a scene, but I'm not an idiot. And I'm not going to get hurt shooting a TV show. And I've been shoved around. I've been tear gassed. I've gotten maced. I got a black eye once and a riot. It's going to happen. But you've got to be smart about it. You've got to be situationally aware. That's the situation. That's the phrase I was looking for. You have to be careful, because I promise you, no one at that TV station wants you to get hurt. I don't care where you work. Your bosses do not want you to get hurt shooting a story or reporting on a story. It's very, very important. Safety is the most important thing. When they're talking about what I just said, as far as getting beat up physically, getting beat up mentally, or getting this coronavirus thing and getting sick, you got to be smart. You got to be situationally aware. That's a huge thing with me. You got to be safe. You got to be able to go home at night. You're no good to your wife and kids dead, or your family, or whatever your family situation is.
Is you have another one? So that would be one point. Do you have any other?
I think a big thing is maintaining your gear. You've got to keep your batteries up. As simple as this sounds, you'd be surprised. We've all done it. Make sure you've got your memory cards. Make sure your batteries are up. Make sure your gear is in working order. Make sure your tripod's in working order. The worst thing is rolling up on something and pulling out a broken piece of gear and not being able to get it. We've all done it. It happens. But you've got to maintain your stuff. You can't let your stuff just sit there. Scrub your cards at the end of the week if you need to have fresh cards for the week. So that way you don't run out of memory. Keep your batteries up. If your batteries are starting to fail, get new ones. You have to be able to rely on your gear. And the only way you can do that is by maintaining your own stuff. And if you work at a big station, you got a maintenance staff. Like we did at BNS, we had a bunch of really great people who helped us maintain our gear, because they understood if you're 40 miles out of town shooting a fire and your gear goes down, what are you going to do? You can't do your job. So they were always really good about dropping everything sometimes and helping us with our problems. So just maintenance of your stuff. Keep a full tank of gas in your truck. You wanted a couple more, didn't you? Backups. Oh, of course. These days especially, I mean, back in the videotape days, there were a couple of times where I thought I lost a tape. And then let me tell you something, that's a bad feeling. And as it happened, that's a long walk back to the truck trying to find the tape that you're looking for. Because you grab the wrong one, sometimes. And you get banged, and you have a panic attack, and your heart falls through the floor. But then you walk back and you search through the 20 tapes you've got and find the one that is that double clutch. You know what double clutching is, right? That's when you think you hit record, but you hit it twice, and you shut it off, and you don't record the interview. It has literally happened to everybody I know, including myself. It is the worst feeling in the world.
That's happened to me.
Terrible. And if it makes you feel any better,
I thought I was recording.
Oh, it's the worst. And it just sits as a habit. I look at that little record like 40 times during an interview, just instinctively. And still now I'll freak myself out. Like, was I recording? Because it's so instinctual now. But just, we're all human. We all make mistakes. I guess that's the third thing is take it easy on yourself a little bit. Like I'm a very driven person when it comes to what I do for a living. I always want to have the greatest product I can have. That's very important to me. And if I screw up, if I miss a shot, if I do something wrong, I feel terrible about it. But you know what? Tomorrow's another day. just learn from that, remember it, and move on. Because you're going to be shooting something else tomorrow. It's going to be fun.
That is that could not be more true. Like when I was in college, 2010, 2006, I was learning on tape. I
Sure,
was
we all
shooting
did.
with tape.
Yeah,
I got out in a pro editing. Now there's no more tapes.
yeah.
I learned one way, and now I mean it's the same basic concept, but it's different
Well, at
media.
first I shot on tape for 15 years, and at first we were all terrified of nonlinear editing. Like, what in the world are you talking about with this computer crap? And it took us. They had a seminar for us to teach us to use Aurora, which is a Grass Valley nonlinear editor. This was probably 2004, 2005. And we were all scared. They were like, "Well, this has been fun. I'll see you guys at the shoe store. We're done." But of course, we adapted and we moved on. This is part of kind of going with the flow and learning how to do new things. And now I can't imagine life without it. I miss videotape like a kick in the head because nonlinear editing is the best. You have these powerful video editing software. You do great things in the hands of a skilled editor you could never do with videotape. It's the best. It's just and not to mention the fact we had no choice. Like what I said earlier, sink or swim. You can complain about this stuff all day, but at the end of the day, you still have to use it. So just do your job. Be a professional.
All right. Do you have any other, before I start wrapping up here, do you have any other tactics? I think we hit on two, going a third one. Have maybe just one more.
I think it's hard not to keep coming back to taking care of your gear because you're going to get new gear every few years. Learn that gear, know your stuff, know what you're doing, and keep an open mind. Learn from other people. Learn from watching other people and what they do, and ask questions. I tell this to students all the time. I learned by asking questions and by watching other people's work. The only way you're going to improve, it's like being a musician. Nobody learns to be a musician by playing by themselves. There's no way to get better than playing in a group. And if you're lucky enough to work for a media group or a station that with a bunch of great guys you can learn from, do it. Guys, women too, excuse me. Men and women you can learn from, do it. Because that fun, creative aspect of the job, which I still love after almost 30 years, is still there. But you have to keep in mind, you have to be willing and open to learning. It's like like earlier you made talking about being a teacher or something like that. Teachers are always learning, always taking classes, always learning new things. And with technology changing, with life changing, with the situations all over the world changing, with this new virus, with all this nonsense, you have to keep your mind open and learn.
And I actually have one other thing that I
Sure.
can add to that. I've always heard, and I grew into this as well. I I think of this verse, but well, there's one aspect usually in production, usually in the studio when you're in a controlled studio, but it's even out in the field too. There's one aspect that's usually forgotten, and you're getting into post editing, and it's too late by that time. It's audio.
Yes.
When you're shooting, check your levels, wear headphones.
Every time, if I ever see a photographer without headphones, I want to yell at them. Always wear headphones, always, because you never know. If there's a crackle, because these Electrosonics and Sennheisers wireless mics are very, very good. But if there's a crackle and you miss some important audio, you have to be able to stop and say, wait a second, ask that question again. You can't, it just drives, if you're just shooting beef, you're just spraying a scene, whatever. You're just rolling around shooting a couple of videos of cracks and fine, that's fine. But if you're shooting an interview, always wear headphones. I don't care if they're earbuds over the years like you've got on. It's so critical because you don't, like you said, you don't want to get back and realize you lost after your interview because you saw the little meter going, but it was
a bad audio.
Yeah, but it was fuzzed out. It sounded like garbage. It's just it's not worth it. It's just laziness. You can't be that lazy.
So you pay attention to your red recording light. Make sure you're actually capturing video. Make sure you're capturing good audio.
Because let me tell you something. If you're a fool about this, word will get out fast. And not only when you get fired, you're not going to work. You cannot have unreliable people doing what we do. You have to get it. And as I said earlier, everybody has a bad day. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone does dumb things. But you have to have a consistent reputation as a reliable person in this job. I don't care if you're a photographer, reporter, producer, director. You have to show up and know what you're doing and be consistent quality in your work. because they demand it, and they should demand that. It's not too much to ask. Be a professional. You should have called this talk "Be a Professional."
Being professional, how it's adapting, but yeah, it's being professional while adapting.
Sure, and
Yeah.
working with people, and I've had some reporters that have had brilliant ideas on how to do just creative stand-ups, interviews, and I've loved those ideas. I never would have thought of it myself. And with all this adapting, with all this social distancing, it's really neat when you can take your camera, shoot a tablet, and have that be your interview. That's really cool. When all this first started, one of our reporters had very little experience with this, and she literally held her phone up to the camera and recorded like that. And it didn't look great, didn't sound great, but we had it. It is what it is. And I'm learning. I think I said earlier, I've never used a webcam, not once, until all this started, 3 weeks ago, a month ago. And it was learning. The Zoom thing was learning. I never even heard of Zoom because it's not a tool. It's not a tool I use at work ever.
I know some people who have a piece of tape.
I had that. Look, here it is. Right.
They cover
See you later.
Yeah.
I'm one of those paranoid security guys,
Yeah. So the few questions that I wanted to start asking this situations is what is this laid back, easygoing questions here? What has quarantine been like in personal or business?
The strangest thing has been not being around people. I'm not the most extroverted person. I like my alone time. I use that to recharge. But for me, not being around people, especially at work, has been very strange, and has led to some communication problems because when you're texting, when you're chatting, a lot of the subtext of conversation gets lost. Because I'm a joker, I tease people a lot, and I hate it when people take jokes seriously and they get hurt. So I really had to tone down on that kind of wise ass nonsense because it's very easy to misinterpret that and think someone's being a jerk or someone's angry with somebody. So we just led a new kind of communication where you'd have to be a little more direct, a little more forthright. We do company meetings using Zoom, which is a little bit better because at least you can see the person, talk to the person. But when you're used to being in the same room with somebody and talking and chatting and enjoying other people's company, it's difficult to work from home. It's much harder than I thought it was going to be. Just psychologically, it's very strange. And being away from my kids and grandkids is tough too. But we all have to be grown-ups about this and understand it's for everybody's safety. You have to be smart. You have to be safe. That's the most important. How would you feel if somebody got sick because of you? It's awful. So you have to keep telling yourself that. And I'll tell you what, thank goodness we have stuff like this and Facebook and FaceTime where I can, my son's in North Carolina, I can FaceTime him and have a face-to-face conversation. Better than nothing. Certainly better than 100 years ago when you had to write a letter, and wait 6 weeks. So I'm grateful for this technology that allows us to interact. It's very, very important. And I'll be honest, it means more to me than I thought it would, being able to talk to people face to face. I didn't really appreciate that or understand how important that was until all this happened.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think people are going to learn the most out of this. I see people when this is all over, we're able to meet in person again. I'm going to give everyone I meet a hug.
When I'm sitting at Longhorn Steakhouse with my daughter and her boyfriend enjoying dinner, I'm going to think about that,
Something you probably mentioned a bunch of these, but just again, something new that you've learned in this last few months.
This right here, doing stuff with this Zoom technology, I literally had never heard of before. And I was always up on Facebook and Twitter because I run the social media accounts for our newscast. So the first thing I did when I got the job in 2016 was create a Facebook page and a Twitter account. Instagram, that's for kids. But Facebook and Twitter are what people who are serious about information, they're going to look at their Twitter feed. This is just my opinion. But just in the past, just adapting to creating quality video product using, a lot of my stuff's been taken away. I can't sit down with you across from a table and interview you anymore. I have to have this goofy mic stand with this tripod, all this nonsense away from you. And missing that person-to-person human contact has been very strange, and it's taken a lot of adaptation. Like I say, getting good quality video, good quality audio out of this, it's a challenge. And maintaining that human contact where I've never looked at people as interviewees, as subjects. I look at them as people, good and bad. If you're a bad guy or if you're a good person, you're not some get. I've always hated that phrase, that someone's a get. You're a person, and talking to you on camera is very strange. This is very strange for me. Interviewing somebody with a video camera is a very unnatural thing to do. And to make them feel comfortable doing that takes some work. And it's very important to be able to do that. Not only are they going to feel more natural, it's just a more humane way to talk to people. I don't like looking at people as interview subjects. You know what I mean? They're people.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things that I'm trying to learn, and it takes away from it. I can't look at you because if I'm actually looking at you, I'm looking away from you
Yeah,
from your perspective because I'm not looking at the camera.
right.
I have to look at the camera and not actually at the person. That's probably the most weirdest thing about
Sure.
the web
But just
conferencing.
connecting with people, you know. And when it's over, you shake hands, you get back in the car, and you're done. But yeah, I guess that's been the biggest change. Is just adapting to a new way of doing things. You have to be safe. You have to be careful. Not going in. I miss going into work.
So the biggest struggle, would you say that would be the biggest struggle?
I think so. I think so. And the biggest struggle has been for a lot of my people I work with who aren't necessarily. I mean, they're produce a lot of audio, but not necessarily a lot of video. And they've been tremendous in learning how to do this very quickly. Because it's intimidating. If you don't know what you're doing with video and audio, it can be very intimidating. And not everyone can do it. But you know, folks I work with have been terrific. But it's difficult. Yeah, just producing that quality that you're used to. Because this audio is fine, but it's not what I'm used to. You know, I'm used to putting a lav mic or having a stick mic, which is the best audio you can get. This is okay. This is serviceable, but I don't. When this thing is over, I hope I never have to shoot another Zoom video again.
How do you are do your best to stay motivated during this time?
I think just my professionalism keeps me motivated. You know, I even though I'm working from home, I mean, I'll get 10 phone calls a day solving problems and generating media, generating video and pictures, going out by myself, shoot interviews. I think it's what I've always done. You know, what else am I going to do? If it's a work day, I'm working. And so I don't think my morale has suffered, me personally. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else. But for me, my morale has suffered because I'm in such constant contact and constant communication with people I work with, even though I'm not with them in person. So I don't feel a lot different that way. Our work day has been reduced from 5 days to 2. So I'm cutting my show in 1 day instead of 3. So that's a little more stressful. But again, the people I work with understand that and they accommodate me. You know, they're not going to throw a bunch of stuff at me at once. They're like one of our reporters he edits his package, he gives me the edited packages, and it's giving me components. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that. I may have to polish it a bit and add a few layers of B-roll, but for the most part, that saves me 3 hours. So just stuff like that.
So not only are you having to adjust in a period of time, now you have to do it in less time.
Which is, and again, that's life in the big city. You know, you sink or swim. You can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. If I could throw a few more cliches in there for you. Can you do it or can't you? Are you a professional or aren't you? You know, and if something comes down to it, I absolutely cannot do it. I am honest about that. You know what I mean? I'll say to my producer, my boss, look, that's just not going to happen. And she knows I'm not fooling around. If I say something can't happen, I'm going to give her a reason, and she trusts me. And that goes true for everybody else I work with too. If it's just not going to happen for whatever reason, what are you going to do?
And before I get to the actual wrap up, what do you recommend for people to take your mind off, to learn new things? I've been watching a lot of YouTube, as I said at the beginning, YouTube and TED Talks. What do you recommend people just?
You mean as far as
if they're looking for content to watch or consume or do, or like to keep their mind off the bad situation?
The first thing I'll say is don't watch too much TV. And I'm as guilty as anybody. I literally have to turn that CNN off, MSNBC, whatever I'm watching. I can only absorb so much. And if I'm going to turn that off from the TV show on, I'm going to do that. Or turn it off and take the dog for a walk or read a book. Take care of yourself mentally. Don't watch too much stuff on TV. And I say that as a TV producer, so you know it's coming. You know where that's coming from. Pace yourself. And I guess it's up to each individual to weed out the nonsense. There's a lot of crap out there. A lot of people who don't know what you're talking about, it sure sound like they do. And you got to be smart. I tell people this all the time. If you see especially if you see some goofy article on Facebook, what's the source? Where did that come from? And you and I both, I'm not going to name names, but you and I both know where all of the garbage comes from. You just got to be careful because there's so much information that can be dangerous out there. So much stuff that's wrong that can be dangerous. Just give yourself a break. You know, some like my daughter said the other day, you know what? We're doing fine. Everyone's doing their best. My kids both have babies at home, and they're stressed out. They're home with babies. That's very hard, but they're doing great. You're doing fine. You are doing fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be fine. You have a roof. God willing, you have a roof over your head. You have a food in your refrigerator. You're doing great. Don't worry about it.
So I was here at here being is being told been told to me in the past. You're here in this time and spot for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's teaching you something
Yeah.
that you have to know moving forward.
And if my mom used to say, let's just sleep on it. Get a good night's sleep. You know, eat a good breakfast, have some coffee. You'll feel better in the morning. She said that to me all the time, and I was had a lot of anxiety as a kid. She goes, you know, you're worrying too much. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And sometimes problems solve themselves. Sometimes problems aren't anywhere near as bad as you thought they were going to be. You know, it's okay. And have someone you can talk to, someone you trust who's going to give you good advice. Support is extremely important.
For anyone that would want to reach out to you about like a job or just to say like, in this digital time or in any time, what's your favorite place to hang out on, whether it be social media, email?
I do
for
my Konik Media. I do Facebook and Instagram. And if you look up KON as in Nancy, KONIK Media, oneword.com is the website. But it's also searchable on Facebook and Instagram. And I post like client videos and that sort of thing.
I'll have all that. I think you provided that to me.
I did, yeah.
Right,
sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can have that up in the notes.
Oh, it'd be great.
Everything.
I'd appreciate it.
So YouTube or Vimeo or YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube's on there. I have a YouTube channel also.
And
that's under my old company name. It was called DK Video LLC is the YouTube channel. I changed to Konik Media because I thought media was more kind of all-encompassing. You know, video is limiting. So I started that back in the video days. Now we do everything else.
All right, so I got 3 final questions.
Go ahead.
What would you want to learn from someone who has seen success or maybe doing something better than you? Who would you want to learn from that you've seen out there doing something great? Who would you want to learn from?
Like a specific individual?
Yes.
That's a really good question. I mean, I'm a film buff, so I have a lot of admiration for movie directors. That's not what I do. I'm sorry to say, I wish it was. Or just anybody I can't think of anybody specific, just anybody who's really been at it a long time and can teach me something and is nice about it. You got to be nice about it. I'm not going to talk to you at all if you're a jerk. I wish I could think of one specific person I wish I could learn from. You can't be afraid to talk to people. You have to walk up and say, hi, my name is Dan. I'm doing this. You know, what are you doing? Because I've learned from what I've watched from learning. This is on the job training, what we do every day. It's great to have a college degree, and that's extremely important. I would never downplay that. I have one myself. I have my bachelor's from High University in telecommunications. That's important to get your foot in the door for the people to take you seriously, but you're only going to learn by getting out there and doing it and asking questions. And I learned from a lot of really great people who taught me things just by keeping my mind open and my eyes open and learning and throwing away the garbage. You know, everyone has their sense of taste and what they think is good and bad, useful and not useful. But I just learned from doing. That's all I can really tell people. I hope that answered the question.
Maybe if you can't put a specific person, maybe it's a what. Maybe what do you want to learn?
What I want to learn is how to consistently make good product. And by good product, I don't just mean the video and the audio. I mean just quality. Like I do a lot of field producing. I ask a lot of questions myself, all by myself. And it's important to me to understand what the interview is about, to get the content they want out of it, and to produce quality video and audio also. So just having that understanding is very important when you're working by yourself. And when you're working with a reporter or a producer or a field producer, understanding what they're trying to get. You know, especially when it comes to B-roll, that's really important because it's an awful feeling when you get back to the station, everything's all over, and like, why didn't you get that shot? Well, because I didn't know, which is, you know, or I missed it, or I didn't understand that's what you wanted. Just staying in tune, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Just staying in tune with what you're doing. And what you're shooting right now, I don't care if it's a car accident, I don't care if it's an interview with the president. What you're shooting right now is the most important thing that you're doing. You're gonna be done with that in 10 minutes because you're shooting some dumb car accident. But while you're shooting that, it's really important to get it right. Don't, take it seriously. I don't care what it is. When you're done with it, you're done with it. You're on to something else. But when you're shooting anything, make sure what you're doing. Make sure you stay with what you're doing. You know what I mean? Stay focused.
And you mentioned you're actually a film buff. This is primarily a film. I call it in the film world
Sure.
podcast. And second, final question: why do you think the film industry is important in our world?
We have to have escape. And I have a wonderful life. I love my life, but I love just being able to fall into a movie or a TV show and forget where I'm at. And just enjoying really solid storytelling and acting and directing, and just enjoying a really good movie or TV show or a song or something like that. We have to have that entertainment. Back in the day, people had books and live music, and then things evolved to phonographs and radio and TV. We have to have that escape. We have to let our brains go and take a break. It's so important to be able to mentally just break off from what you're doing and just get absorbed in something that's not inside your own head. I love it. It's so important to be entertained.
And before I come with the final questions, acknowledge you for, and like everyone else is doing, the one thing I've been loving the most about all this. It's a bad situation, but take the positive from it. I'm seeing growth. I'm seeing people.
Yeah.
I've never seen so many people in the park in my lifetime, out with their kids, dogs, having a picnic on the grass in the park outside.
Yeah, same.
Throwing frisbee, like I've never seen so many people out in the park like what's happening right now.
If there is a silver lining to all this, that's it. Is that people are home with their families. I've always had to try to draw that line. Or I don't want to be that dad who works too much. My work is very important to me, but it's not my life. And I've always tried to strike that balance of, if you don't want to be the guy who's always at work, it's not that much fun. And what's life if not to enjoy yourself? Part of having a good life is being able to enjoy yourself and enjoy your life and having quality of life.
Yeah, enjoying your life and learning something new. And I want to
Sure.
acknowledge you for taking this and learning. In this last month, you opened up your webcam. Acknowledge you for learning that new stuff.
Go.
Acknowledge you for that.
That's part of the fun is trying new things,
And last little, it may be a multi-part, but it can get you to think. These questions I leave off the prepared questions to get them more spontaneous. Perfect. I like to call this perfect ending to your story, your life. Way future down the year, it's you're near. It's the end of your time. You're exactly where you want to be, the age you want to be, and with all the people around you. What is that story like? Where is that? What is your perfect day if it's your last
specifically
day? What would be your perfect day to be your last day?
Interesting. I want to be old, but not so old that I'm a pain in the butt to everybody around me. I want to be useful. You know what I mean? I don't want to live so long that it's, oh God, it's Dad. It's your turn to take care of Dad. Not that my kids would act like that. You know what I mean? I don't want to be miserable, because I've seen that both. My mom and dad both died young, which is unfortunate, very unfortunate. But I've seen the opposite, where people, I don't want to say live too long, because that's not nice. But I personally don't want to live beyond my usefulness. Give me 85, I'll be happy. Surrounded by people who love me, and surrounded by people who are sad to see me go, but glad to know where I'm going. I'm a spiritual person. I believe in heaven and hell. So I think if you live a good life, you know where you're going. And I don't know about a specific location. I really could care less. As long as I'm around family, I could be, anywhere. As long as I'm surrounded by people who care about me. But yeah, give me mid 80s. That's fine. That's a long enough ride. That's 30 years from now. I'm good.
Alright, so I want to thank you for coming on. This
It was a
was
pleasure.
this is one of the quickest turnaround from booking to
Oh, really?
interview and getting ready that I did yet.
I appreciate it. It's about to get busy tomorrow, so I wanted to get it done today because tomorrow's Thursday and Friday are busy days. So I knew you probably want to get the stuff on the air.
But thanks for. I mean, we technically I have it on the air already, but
All right, I really appreciate
this was
the time.
actually
It's been a lot of fun.
this was my first live stream of
Oh,
this
cool.
as well.
That was a lot of fun.
But and I'll look forward to seeing all your stuff you do. You have all your links. I'll be sure I'm link all that up. And
Awesome.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, please share this with your fellow filmmakers and friends, and comment on why you liked it and what stood out to you. Be sure to check back here for weekly episodes as well. And also give a shout out to Dan. He's on social media on Instagram and Facebook. His handles are in the notes on this episode as well. Be sure to check out his website listed in the notes too. Let him know you heard him on the show, and let me know how I am doing. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give me a review and let me know what you liked or what changes I may need to incorporate. Thank you for listening and subscribing to Keeping It Real in the Film World. I hope you got some value from this episode.